Narcissists are afraid of a very specific type of woman, and the fear is not symbolic. It is psychological, it is visceral, and it operates at a level that the narcissist himself cannot consciously identify. He does not think I am afraid of her. He thinks I do not like her. He thinks something about her is off. He thinks she is cold, or arrogant, or difficult, or strange. He finds reasons to avoid her. He finds reasons to discredit her. He finds reasons to warn others about her. But beneath every reason his conscious mind manufactures, beneath every rationalization and every deflection, there is a single unprocessed truth vibrating in the basement of his psyche. She can see me. Not the version of me I constructed. Me. And the narcissist would rather destroy a woman than let that sentence become real. Carl Jung spent decades mapping the architecture of the human shadow, and what he discovered about the relationship between a psychologically integrated person and a psychologically false one explains, with surgical precision, why certain women do not just resist narcissistic manipulation. They neutralize it on contact. They do not fight it. They do not outsmart it. They render it structurally impossible. And understanding how they do this requires understanding what a narcissist actually is beneath the charm, beneath the confidence, beneath the performance that most people mistake for a personality. Before we continue, welcome to Carl Jung Decoded. This is a side of psychology that most people never explore, but these ideas deserve to be understood. I am curious, where in the world are you listening from today? Let me know in the comments, and it helps us build a community of people who believe these ideas can change lives. Why the integrated woman terrifies the narcissist, you first have to understand what the narcissist is running from. Because narcissism, at its Jungian core, is not about arrogance. It is not about selfishness. It is not even about a lack of empathy, though that is its most visible symptom. Narcissism is a psychological architecture built entirely around one function: avoiding the self. The narcissist, at some point in early development, experienced something so threatening to their core identity that the psyche made an emergency decision. It abandoned the real self. Not partially, completely. It built in the place where the real self should have continued developing a structure that Jung would recognize as a massively inflated persona, a false front. A performance so total, so all-encompassing, so fused with the person's conscious identity that the narcissist does not know it is a performance. He believes the mask is his face. The charm is real to him. The confidence is genuine in his experience. The superiority is not an act from his perspective. It is simply who he is. But it is not who he is. It is who he built to survive the annihilating experience of whatever happened to the real self underneath. And the real self, the one that was abandoned, did not die. It was pushed into the deepest layers of the unconscious, where it became the narcissist's shadow. Not a shadow made of dark impulses and aggressive drives, although those exist too. A shadow made of something far more terrifying to the narcissist than any darkness: vulnerability, smallness, emptiness. The real self that was abandoned is a wounded, undeveloped, essentially infantile psychic structure that carries all the feelings the narcissist's false self was specifically designed to never feel. Shame, inadequacy, the terror of being seen as ordinary, the horror of being genuinely known. This is what the narcissist is running from. Every behavior, every manipulation tactic, every relationship strategy the narcissist employs exists for one purpose: to maintain the inflated persona and to ensure that the shadow, the real self, the vulnerable core, is never exposed. Not to others, and especially not to himself. The narcissist's entire psychological life is organized around this single imperative: keep the mask on, whatever it takes, whoever it costs. The mask stays on. Now let us talk about how the narcissist relates to other people, because this is where the integrated woman enters the picture and everything changes. The narcissist does not relate to people. He uses them, not in the crude, conscious way that the word implies. He uses them the way a projector uses a screen. He projects his inflated self-image onto them, and then feeds off their reflection of that image. Jung called this narcissistic supply, though he used different terminology. The narcissist needs a constant stream of external confirmation that the false self is real. He needs people to believe the performance. He needs admiration, attention, obedience, emotional reaction, anything that confirms that the mask is working. The people who provide this supply share a common psychological characteristic. They accept the projection. They see the mask and they believe it is the face. They interact with the false self as though it were real. They admire the confidence without seeing the emptiness beneath it. They respond to the charm without detecting the calculation behind it. They engage with the persona, and in doing so, they provide the narcissist with the one thing he cannot generate internally: a reflection that confirms his existence as he wishes to be seen. The narcissist is extraordinarily skilled at identifying people who will accept his projection. He scans for specific psychological signatures: people with poor boundaries, people with a high need for approval, people who confuse intensity with intimacy, people who were parentified in childhood and develop the caretaking reflex that makes them endlessly willing to pour into someone who takes without reciprocating. People who carry their own unintegrated shadow in the form of low self-worth, which makes them susceptible to the narcissist's initial idealization because it feels like the validation they have been starving for. The narcissist reads these signatures the way a card player reads tells, unconsciously, rapidly, and with devastating accuracy. He moves toward the person who will provide the cleanest mirror, the person who will believe the performance most completely, the person whose psychological configuration makes them the most efficient source of supply. And then he encounters her, the woman who has done her shadow work, the woman who has been through the fire of genuine Jungian individuation, the woman who has faced her own darkness, integrated her own wounds, withdrawn her own projections, and emerged with a psyche that operates from the self rather than from the ego. And from the first moment of contact, something goes wrong for him. Something he cannot immediately identify, but that his unconscious registers with the urgency of a survival alarm. Something is different about this one. The first thing that fails is the charm. The narcissist deploys charm automatically. It is his primary tool for establishing the initial projection. Charm creates a feeling of specialness in the target, a feeling of being uniquely seen, uniquely valued, uniquely chosen. And for most people this works, because most people are hungry to feel special. Most people carry an unmet need for recognition that the narcissist's charm temporarily fills. But the integrated woman is not hungry. She has spent years learning to feed herself. She has confronted the parts of her psyche that craved external validation, and she has integrated them. She does not need to feel special because she has done something far more psychologically advanced. She has accepted being ordinary, not in the defeated sense, in the liberated sense. She knows that the need to feel special is itself a shadow element, a compensation for an underlying belief in her own insufficiency. She has faced that belief. She has metabolized it. And in its place, she has developed a relationship with herself that does not require inflation. So when the narcissist deploys charm, when he makes her feel uniquely seen and singularly valued, she does not light up the way his targets normally do. She feels the charm and she recognizes it, not intellectually, somatically, in her body. Something registers as performative. Something about the intensity does not match the depth. The spotlight he is shining on her feels warm, but it does not feel real. And she trusts that feeling because she has learned, through years of shadow work, to trust her own perceptual system over someone else's presentation. The narcissist senses this non-response. He does not understand it consciously, but he feels it the way you feel a temperature drop. The mirror is not reflecting. The projection is not landing. The charm, his most reliable instrument, has hit a surface that does not absorb it. It bounces back. And what bounces back, what the narcissist receives in return, is not admiration. It is being seen, not the false self being seen and validated. The real self being detected beneath the false one. The integrated woman's eyes do not stop at the persona. They go straight through it, not because she is trying to analyze him, not because she is suspicious or guarded, but because a psyche that has integrated its own shadow develops the capacity to perceive shadow in others. She has spent years learning to see what is hidden beneath surfaces. She did this work on herself first. She faced her own masks, her own performances, her own carefully curated false selves. She dismantled them. She learned their architecture from the inside. And now she can recognize that architecture in others with the same effortless precision that a retired architect recognizes structural flaws in a building. She sees the performance. She sees the emptiness beneath it. She sees the terrified, undeveloped real self crouching behind the inflated facade. She sees all of it, and she does not have to say a word. The narcissist feels it. This is the moment of fear. Not the dramatic, cinematic fear of confrontation. Something much worse. The quiet, cellular level recognition that someone has bypassed the security system. Someone is inside the perimeter. Someone has seen what was never meant to be seen. For the narcissist, this is an existential emergency. His entire psychological structure exists to prevent exactly this. The false self is a fortress built to protect the real self from exposure. This woman has walked through the walls as though they were not there. She has not attacked the walls. She has not argued with them or tried to tear them down. She has simply looked through them. And looking through them is infinitely more threatening than trying to destroy them, because destruction the narcissist can handle. Destruction activates his defenses. He can fight, he can rage, he can play victim, he can deploy any number of counter-strategies. But being quietly, calmly, accurately perceived, there is no counter-strategy for that. There is no manipulation that works on someone who can see the manipulation happening in real time. There is no charm that functions on someone who can detect the mechanism behind the charm. There is no guilt trip that lands on someone who has already done the work of separating genuine responsibility from manufactured obligation. If you are a woman who has noticed that narcissistic people react to you with inexplicable hostility, avoidance, or sudden aggression, especially after you went through a period of deep personal transformation, do not stop listening now. What comes next explains exactly why your growth became their threat. The narcissist's response to the integrated woman follows a predictable sequence because it is driven not by personal choice but by psychological structure. The first response is testing. He escalates the charm. He increases the intensity. He tries harder. If normal strength idealization did not produce the expected response, he amplifies it. More attention, more flattery, more demonstrations of how deeply he sees and values her. This is the psychological equivalent of turning up the volume when someone does not seem to hear you. He does not consider that the problem might not be volume but frequency. He is hearing him perfectly. She is simply not responding because what she is hearing does not match what she is sensing. And the gap between what he says and what she senses is where her power lives. She does not announce this gap. She does not confront him with it. She simply holds it internally. She observes. She registers. And the narcissist, who is accustomed to his performance being accepted at face value, begins to feel something he is deeply unfamiliar with, being studied. The second response is provocation. When charm fails to produce supply, the narcissist shifts to its shadow equivalent. He provokes. He says something designed to produce a strong emotional reaction. This is not random cruelty. It is strategic. If he can provoke her into anger, into defensiveness, into any form of emotional reactivity, he accomplishes two things. He gets a form of supply, because even negative emotional energy feeds the false self's need to feel impactful. And more importantly, he pulls her out of her center. An emotional reaction means she has been destabilized, and a destabilized person is a person whose perceptual clarity drops. She stops seeing through him and starts reacting to him. The integrated woman does not take this bait. Not because she is suppressing her reaction, because her reaction is genuinely different from what the narcissist expects. Shadow work did not teach her to control her anger. It taught her to understand it. When the narcissist provokes, she feels the provocation register in her body. She notices it. She might even feel a flash of the old reactivity. But between the stimulus and the response, there is a space. Viktor Frankl described this space. Jung described this space. Is the space that opens when a person has developed a conscious relationship with their own unconscious reactions, rather than being hijacked by them. In that space, she does not react. She chooses. And what she typically chooses is the one response the narcissist has no protocol for. She remains calm, not performed calm. The deep, settled, immovable calm of a psyche that has been through its own fire and is no longer flammable by someone else's sparks. The third response is devaluation. When neither charm nor provocation works, When the narcissist has failed to produce supply through either positive or negative means, he moves to the strategy of last resort. He attempts to diminish her. He begins to subtly and then not so subtly attack her identity. He questions her intelligence. He undermines her perception. He implies that she is cold, broken, incapable of love, too analytical, too intense, not feminine enough, too masculine in her energy. These attacks are precision targeted at the areas where most women carry residual insecurity. And against most women, they work. Because most women, even strong ones, even self-aware ones, carry shadow material around their worthiness that can be activated by the right pressure in the right place. But the integrated woman has already been to those places. She has already sat in the center of every insecurity the narcissist is trying to activate. She has already held the belief that she is too much and not enough simultaneously, and she has survived it. She has already faced the fear that her intensity makes her unlovable, and she has grieved it and released it. She has already confronted the shadow belief that her power makes her unfeminine, and she has integrated it into a definition of femininity that does not require anyone else's permission. The narcissist is firing arrows at targets that no longer exist. The wounds he is aiming for have already been healed, not patched over, not covered with affirmations, healed, composted, transformed into the very ground she stands on. Every insecurity he tries to weaponize is an insecurity she has already befriended. And you cannot wound someone with a weapon made of something they have already made peace with. This is the point at which the narcissist's fear becomes unmanageable. Charm failed, provocation failed, devaluation failed. The three pillars of narcissistic control have collapsed in sequence, and the integrated woman is still standing exactly where she was, unmoved, undiminished, still seeing through him with those clear, unbothered, impossibly steady eyes. And now the narcissist faces something he has spent his entire psychological life engineering his way out of: genuine reflection. The integrated woman, by virtue of her refusal to be manipulated, has become the one thing the narcissist cannot tolerate. An honest mirror, not a mirror that reflects what he wants to see, a mirror that reflects what is actually there. And what is actually there, what lies behind the charm and the performance and the inflated false self, is the thing the narcissist has been running from since the original womb that created him. Emptiness, smallness, the terrified, abandoned real self that was never allowed to develop. The integrated woman does not point at this. She does not diagnose him or lecture him or try to heal him. She does not need to. Her presence is the diagnosis. The unmanipulable calm is the mirror. Her very existence in his field of awareness forces a proximity to his own truth that his entire personality was built to prevent. And that is why he must destroy her, or disappear. Those are the only two options available to a psyche that cannot tolerate being seen. Destroy the mirror or leave the room. There is no third option, because the third option would be to look at the reflection and accept it. And that would require the capacity for genuine self-confrontation that the narcissistic structure specifically lacks. Jung understood that the narcissistic personality is not simply a difficult person. It is a person whose relationship with their own unconscious has been catastrophically severed. The real self was abandoned so early and so completely that the false self became the only self the person knows. There is no one inside to do the shadow work. There is no functional ego capable of mediating between the conscious performance and the unconscious truth. There is only the mask and the void behind it. The integrated woman who has done the opposite, who has torn down her own masks and built a genuine self in the space they left behind, represents living proof that the journey the narcissist cannot take is possible. And that proof is intolerable. It is intolerable because it eliminates the narcissist's deepest unconscious excuse. The excuse that says there is no other way to be. The excuse that says everyone is performing. The excuse that says authenticity is a myth, and the best you can do is build the most convincing mask. The integrated woman demolishes that excuse simply by existing. She is not performing. She is not masked. She is real. In her realness is a mirror that shows the narcissist exactly what he sacrificed when he abandoned his own authentic self to build the fortress of false confidence that has governed his life. She does not do this intentionally. She does not do it aggressively. She does it the way the sun does it to a room full of shadows. by being present, by being luminous, by being in the deepest Jungian sense whole. And wholeness in the presence of fragmentation is not neutral. It is an act of confrontation that requires no words, no intention, and no effort. It simply is. And it is the one thing the narcissist cannot fight, cannot charm, cannot manipulate, and cannot survive being near for long. If you are this woman, if you have done the work and noticed that certain people react to your growth as though it were an attack on their existence, now you know why. It is not about you. It has never been about you. It is about what you represent to a psyche that chose the false over the real, and now must live with the consequences of that choice every time it encounters someone who chose differently. Your integration is not a weapon, but it functions as one in the presence of someone who is committed to remaining fragmented. And that is not your burden. That is your proof. Proof that the work was real. Proof that what you built inside yourself is solid enough to withstand the full force of someone whose entire existence depends on tearing it down. They could not tear it down. They never will. Because what is built from shadow work cannot be destroyed by someone who is afraid of their own shadow. You are the thing they cannot become. And that is the most honest compliment a narcissist will ever pay you. This explains something that has been confusing you for years. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. What we build here is not content. It is a mirror. And the right people always recognize their own reflection.